welcome to the discussion panel. I hope you've enjoyed the day so far. It's been really good fun as far as we can see. The best fun you can have online, or something like that. But the videos that we saw recently were great. Great to see those reports from Slovenia and Poland, and also catch up on the UK. Will's going to talk a little bit about some of the other countries as well. But whilst we're talking, can anybody who's got questions please fire them at us? We're more than keen to answer any questions about the crop this year. But my first question, I guess, starts with the dreaded C word, coronavirus. How has it been regarding the availability of labour and getting people over to pick hops this year? Start with Ali, and then we'll go on to Boštjan.
I want to go back to how we trained our hops.
Yeah, well, that's fine. Yeah, training.
because COVID happened just at the point that the hops were growing, and we had no labour. And actually, for our farm, we did have 4 of our core team here. They'd come in early to help us prune trees, but we had 8 that were due to travel to join, and they couldn't come. And not because our borders closed, but because they couldn't leave their country. So it was a bit of a nightmare, it's fair to say, but we recruited locally because in the UK we had a lot of people who ended up furloughed, or in fact a lot of students who were just sent home. So we had a mix of furloughed and student staff. So that's how we got our hops trained. So a merry band of people that had never done it before, which was interesting to try and manage. Hop picking has thrown up similar problems, and we've got a core team of amazing people that come back from Poland every year. And we had anticipated that 16 were going to come. 16 became 10 when we were truthful and honest about how different it was going to be this year, with face masks and cohorts and no shopping and all that, all the things we need to do to keep people safe. And actually 10 became 5 when they started worrying about how they were going to get home. So we're without quite a lot of our core team this year, which is not great. We have managed to find workers, so we're not struggling. But I do think we need to reflect on the reason why. And the reason why we're able to bring workers still from Europe is because in some of the further Eastern European countries, they haven't had the same furlough schemes as we've had here. And there are some families who are really struggling. So whilst I'm very grateful as a business that we're able to bring those workers in, I'm very worried about what happens to them when they go home.
Definitely, yeah. Boštjan, I guess it's been similar sort of position in Slovenia.
Yes, hello everybody. It was. We had some quarantine in springtime, and at that time for the training we needed to do ourselves. So we all been a bit of trainees. How to train, help to twine the coir into the soil. But later on, the labor arrived, and the government and our national crop growers association arrange people and their licenses were approved, so the labor was able to come to help on the farms. For the training, hop later on, the people were already here, so they stayed here the whole time, and hops were successfully trained to the wire. So,
did I hear that some of the growers had to get the labour early so that they could self-isolate for two weeks before the harvest? Was that right?
Yeah, this was happening before the harvest, and so it needs to come into the quarantine because Romania, we get people from Romania was on the red list, and therefore they need to go into quarantine. So 14 days to do nothing, to be on the farm, was a very challenging thing for farmers this year.
I expect they're all keen to get back home now, are they?
They're very keen to go back home. They miss their families. So
yeah, difficult times. And just talking about that with the American crop, Will, the Mexican families that come in, a lot of them are now living in Yakima. But having the same issues. I think there was quite a lot of COVID-19 up in Yakima in the early part of this pandemic, wasn't there?
Yes. So the Mexican labour that normally train and harvest the hops and do a lot of the field work in the States, they tend to live in communal groups with many families occupying a single dwelling, and it has caused some problems over there. Although I believe they've got enough labour for harvesting. Yakima itself has actually been a hotspot for the virus, unfortunately, and some of it is blamed on that, and then families moving around the valley.
It's a very big agricultural area, so there's a lot of influx of travelling families to come and help picking not just hops but all sorts of fruit and veg up there, isn't it? So, I know I can ask Bostian this question: how have the yields been? Because he already said on his video how what a nice crop it's been this year. I'm a bit reluctant to do that with Ali. So how's the quality been, Ali?
Well, no, you can talk to me about yields as well, Paul. Okay. It's fine. I would say we've got if we had started by trying to grow the crop which we had intended to grow, this would be an average year, and a bit more average in Kent than here because they just haven't had the rainfall, and that always affects the yield. We took measures as an industry. The British Hop Association came together in early April and started talking about COVID and the impact on pubs and brewers. And we knew we were going to have to share the pain because this was, however you forecast it, even in early April, it was looking like we were going to create a hop surplus. So we got together as an industry and we asked all growers to only grow what was contracted, which meant that 20% of the national crop, we explicitly asked growers not to grow. And farmers hate being told not to grow stuff. It really goes against the DNA, not growing things. So different businesses went about that in different ways. We took out 26% of our hop acreage this year. It just went. Some businesses chose to do the same, others single strung, and others idled. And whichever way you look at it, therefore means that compared to last year, which was a very good year, our yields look pretty poor by comparison. I'm actually doing a piece of work for the business at the moment around what the 5-year picture looks like, and I would say ours will look pretty average across the 5-year. The quality looks amazing, though, Paul. It's the same on the fruit. We grow fruit too. And what we're seeing on the fruit is great sugar levels, really good quality fruit, really lovely, beautiful colour as well. And I would say the colour of our hops this year look fantastic, but the aromas are just beautiful. I'm really blown away when I go round, and I'm sure you've been out there having a poke and a sniff as well. But the quality looks great. Yeah, excellent, great news. And Will, what about? We haven't heard yet about the Czech Republic, for example, which is very important for the Sarts variety. You've had a word with Jindra. Jindra normally joins us at the HopWalk.
Yeah, he can't join us today, unfortunately. Reflecting on the labour issue, Czech actually shut down their borders very early to all visitors, and that there were some big appeals going out to students and people who would traditionally train the hops, so that there were some real labour issues. It took them twice as long to train the hops. But looking at the growing conditions in Czech, contrary to Bostian's fortune in Slovenia, the late spring and early summer in Czech was very cold, and that really slowed the growth of the hops down. Then in August, they had really hot sort of tropical weather, and the plants didn't enjoy that stress factor. So Sarts, which is about 90% of the area grown in Czech, that they less than normal.
Oh, yeah, back. We lost you for a second there, Will.
Just when I was saying how low the yields were, well, that's fortunate. No, the yields appear to be 30 to 35% below normal, which is very unfortunate. Alphas and quality appear to be good. No specific disease problems this year. There was a little bit of downy, but nothing that affected the quality. And actually, the cooler weather at the start of the summer meant that red spider didn't really get started and get into the hops, which Sarts in particular is quite prone to.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So disappointing in the Czech Republic, and of course a lot of the farms in the Czech don't have irrigation as well, which makes things more difficult for them when it's particularly dry. I know Slovenia, most of the farms now have got irrigation. That's right, is it, Bosjan?
Yeah, it is true.
Yeah. So they're in a better position on that sort of thing.
But this year it was not necessary to irrigate at all. We had much more than enough rain.
Really, you had an English summer.
Sorry?
An English summer.
An English summer, definitely. Yeah. We discussed what exactly.
There you go.
That's where it went.
Yeah.
It went.
Ali, one of the things we were talking about earlier on was dry matters and why dry matters matter. Can you just explain a little bit about what you've been doing on the farm this year?
Yeah, so why do dry matters matter? They're an indicator of quality, and they're also an indicator of storability, especially for fruit. So they're very common in fruit growing across the world. You don't pick until you know what your dry matters are. And actually, it was on a trip to New Zealand back in 2013, and I realised that when I was down there talking to the growers, they were all picking their hops according to dry matter. And anyway, I got chatting to a really friendly agronomist who talked to me about how they do it there and why they do it. So I came home and said, right, we're going to have to start having a go at this, because there's no data in the UK on dry matters on hops. And I thought, well, there's no point in me going out to the industry and saying, let's do it, because everybody would be looking at me to say, why? Why do you want us to do something else? So, and of course, we have to remember that British hops are seeded. So we can't really take data from other parts of the world and make it make sense here. So I'm very proud to say that we will have 5 years worth of dry matter data by the time we hit the end of this harvest. And what we've been doing is testing our dry matters a week before we think they're due to harvest, and then the day we harvest. And so we've got 5 years worth of data that says this is the dry matter about a week before, and this is the dry matter on the date of harvest. I've shared some of the data with Will actually on Jester. And what's interesting is obviously we're judging when to harvest our hops on the feel, the look, and importantly, the aroma. But I would say we're pretty consistent. Our dates aren't necessarily consistent, but our judgment seems to be quite consistent because the dry matters are consistent, which is really interesting. There was quite a date range, wasn't there, Will? There was about a week in terms of when we chose to start a particular variety. But the dry matters were consistent. And that's really solid data then that we can start to share with the rest of the industry to say, obviously we only grow 10 varieties, we don't grow all 34, and not all varieties are the same, but we can start to share it with the industry and start to get other growers to use dry matter as a quality benchmark. Yeah,
very good. Sounds good. Excellent. Talking about other countries, one of the biggest countries, or the two biggest countries in the world are Germany and the States. Obviously, Germany is very close to Slovenia and the Czech Republic and Poland. Will, how's that fared in comparison to the country? Because obviously there's a very different dynamic to Slovenia, to Poland and Czech.
Yeah, so Germany seems to have steered a happy medium. They've had enough rain. They just about got enough labour. Again, they had to put a wider appeal out to students at the start of the year, but they seem to have enough labour. Yields so far, and they're still like us, mid-harvest. Yields are a little bit less than average, but not by much. But alphas appear to be really good, so they're feeling optimistic that that everyone will be satisfied with the crop, and the quality looks really good. They haven't had any particular disease pressure like Bosjan. They had enough rain when they needed it, and no particular downy or powdery pressure to spoil things for them.
Very good. And the States?
In the States, it was looking very good till about 3 weeks ago, when they've had some extremely high temperatures, followed by some strong winds. And if you've been watching the news, you may have seen that there's forest fires on the west coast of the state. So Idaho and Washington have been particularly affected by the wind, and then Washington and Oregon have been affected by these fires. And actually, we've been having video conferences with some growers and some of our team over there, and the smoke is everywhere. Downtown Portland looked like somebody got a campfire going on next to the window, and this has taken what looked to be the biggest crop in some years, certainly bigger than last year, and slightly above average. It's difficult to judge average because there was an increase in acreage, but it's gone from being average to above average to slightly below or average. It's just dropped it back a little bit. So some of the cones were knocked off by the high winds, and some of the bines dropped to the floor and weren't able to be harvested. So there's the yield's been affected slightly, but bearing in mind the market has been slightly subdued due to the crisis, I think most things will be okay for any brewers that need them.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that we've got to take into account, that the whole of the beer market has been affected by this, and so having a light crop isn't necessarily going to do any harm. I think overall it'll just perhaps prevent a lot of hops sitting around in stores for a lot longer, and hopefully give us some fresher hops we can move on to as quickly as possible for the brewers. Please fire away any questions. I can't see any coming in unless I'm missing them, but if there are any questions, please let me know what you want me to ask the panel. I've got one for Boštjan. In his video, there was a lot of the mention of the word Styrian, Boštjan. Obviously, in the past, we've always considered Slovenian hops. Is the Styrian thing a new thing? What's going on there?
Actually, our national Slovenian Hop Grower Association tried to protect with the geographic protection on the hops. So because you probably are all aware that some of our varieties are grown else in the world, so and sometimes are sold as the same as Slovenian hops. But as you probably know, that on the hops has also some other things. Much in fact has got influence on the growing conditions. So the weather, the pedigree, the soil. So pretty much when we are discussing about the Styrian hops, Slovenian hops, Slovenian varieties, brewers should be aware where they're getting from. So
yeah,
this was the protection.
The terroir is very important, a bit like Champagne or Mountain Mowbray pork pies. You want to try and protect that that provenance where they're coming from.
Yeah, like you see in the background, those are the marks, the Styrian hops.
Yeah.
So this is
very good. Very good.
The labels are supported with this marks, and you're sure that you're getting the same original Slovenian varieties.
Very good. Very good. Ali, what are we picking at the moment on the farm?
Sorry?
Sorry, I was going to Ali now. Boštjan, thank you very much for that. Yeah. What are we picking now?
We're just finishing off Pilgrim and about to pick Target. We had a big debate yesterday, Target or Jester next. So the nose had to go and decide. I was dispatched to decide, and I think we'll go Target next and then Jester. Olicana, I think, will be last this year, which it hasn't been before, but it's not a usual year again. And I think just because we have a schedule one year does not mean we follow the same schedule every year. It's about when the hops are ready. Yeah,
absolutely. And we've seen some early hops and some late hops later than we would normally expect. It's quite a very unusual year, fairly.
Yeah.
That's why the dry matters is so important, because you can schedule your picking according to historic information, but actually the dry matters tell us more about specific varieties and when we should be picking them.
There's a question coming for you from Gareth Bateman. Boštjan, thank you for the question, Gareth. How's the citrus bark cracking viroid situation in Slovenia?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's a very good question. It's very, very actual still in Slovenia, but we have noticed a little bit of a slowdown in the progress. So most of those affected farms were inspected this year, but we are noticing really a slowdown in the progress of development of a disease. So it's a relief for the moment. Yeah,
that's good. I think the ministry over in Slovenia were paying particular attention to all the farms where any the virus was, and they've done a very good job at slowing it down. A lockdown on Slovenian hops, Styrian hops.
Yeah. Yes, another thing that I was trying to say is that the Ministry of the Agriculture is supporting this disease, as a quarantine disease. So some growers who can grow, they get some subsidy money not to grow. It's the same thing happening in the COVID situation. We're doing in the hops situation to put some fields in the quarantine and start preventing of the spreading.
Furloughing the hops, I guess that's what we compare it to over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Question for Ali. So what happens if two are ready at the exact same time? Thanks, Darren, for your question there. What takes priority? I guess it's probably the one that's paying the most money, Ali, isn't it? That's the right
answer? Well, yes, obviously. Commercial outcomes, but also disease. If we've got a bit of a disease pressure in one, that would go first. And also some hop varieties, the aroma will last for longer and some won't. A good example of one where it does not, it's there and then it's gone, is Sovereign. It's literally, you've got about a 4 or 5 day window. And if you miss it, you are picking a hop with no aroma. So it depends on the variety is the answer.
But
go on, Will.
So to contrast that, something like Jester has a relatively large picking window. You could pick it from some Jester growths have already been picked, and Ali, you're thinking that you're not going to start until
sometime
next week.
Yeah.
So you would use that as a guide.
Yeah, and in our case, we've got 3 or 4 yards of Jester. We've got a couple of yards of Goldings. So sometimes it's about, 1 yard will be ready before another as well. So but Richard and I go out together every couple of days, and we look and we feel and we smell. And
sounds very romantic, Ali.
Oh, we really know how to live it up here. For the love of hops, Paul.
There we go. Absolutely beautiful. And Marcel, anything exciting in the Slovenian hop yards? What are you thinking is nice new varieties you enjoying growing? Yeah,
there's still some of these flavor varieties we are still trying to promote. They're showing really good feedback from the brewers, and we are still very excited to grow them and to get really a good feedback. This encourages us even more.
Very good, very good. And Will, we've got some plants over in Czech Republic and Slovenia and in Poland with Darius, as we saw on the video earlier. You pleased with the progress of those?
Yes, so Darius has done a great job in Poland, and we're looking forward to the first sort of real commercial size plots from him. In Czech Republic, we've got the new variety Moss that some of you may have smelt, but it's a really citrusy, pineapple-y, but with a Czech twist to it. And that hop, it's its first yield of above 1,000 kilograms. So that should allow lots of brewers to have a go with it, hopefully. It's very exciting, that one. So we're quite fortunate. And in the States, we've got some trial plots that are also coming through, including some which are exceptionally early. So we had some of our new varieties with alphas above 12 and oils above 3% mid-August, which you might wonder why that's exciting for us, apart from having an aromatic hop. In the US, they've got a lot of late varieties, and the growers are struggling to fit them into their picking schedules. And what they would really like is something that's early and fruity. And so we've got a couple that are showing great promise that we might be able to put early in the picking schedule.
Yeah, excellent. And Ali, I know that you're very heavily involved with us both on the British Hop Association side and also on the Charles Fareham program side. Is there anything there, or there's probably lots of things there that you like, but is there anything there in particular that you think will be looking good this year?
Well, I'm hoping you're going to come and have a look on Friday, actually, Paul, because Richard has said he's not picking them until you've seen them.
Right, okay.
Because he's really excited about
I'll be out there Friday evening.
Yeah, we've got some really lovely looking hops in the trials. So we are involved in the Charles Farm Development Programme. So we're growing Harlequin, Olicana and Jester. Haven't forgotten anything, have I, chaps? No.
You've got a small amount of Godiva as well.
We've got a small amount of Godiva. And then we've got some trials for you. And we've also got some trials which are Fairham sponsored out of the British Shop Association programme. We're one of the farms that has stepped up to do that as well, because we're not busy enough. And we've got some really lovely looking stuff in there. One or two that really look like growers' hops. We get excited when there's loads of cones and not too much leaf. We've got one with a bit of male, which is interesting because that's how Jester drew all of our interest to start with. But we were assessing them the other day with Clara from the Y Hops breeding programme, and the aromas were amazing. Not on all of them because they're not all ready, but about half are ready. And those aromas were really interesting. There were one or two which I was struggling to describe. I needed you there actually, Will, because you're so good with your words. But one or two were really quite unusual and not necessarily very pleasant. But I do know from experience that is often the sign of a good brewing hop. So yeah, I'm looking forward to you coming around on Friday, Paul, and having a look. Great.
I know when we were rubbing and sniffing some of the hops that Peter Glendenning brought across from the nursery last year, we had a very Marmite hop, and not Marmite in the fact that it was like you liked it or you didn't, but it smelt like twiglets, which was really quite unusual. Boston, I have no idea what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Marmite and twiglets. Basically a yeast-based extract, Boston, that you spread on your toast, and very, very strong sort of flavours of that. I'm not sure they'll be ideal for a beer, but let's not kick anything out of the programme that's got something different in it, because you never know, do you? You never know. You never know.
Some of these thiols, which tend to be the aromas that we dislike, are quite important for biotransformation with yeast. So it might not smell very nice to us now, but once the yeast has had a chance to get hold of it, it might turn into something really nice and fruity after fermentation.
Very good, very good. There's lots of exciting stuff coming through, obviously. Jan, what are you picking at the moment in Slovenia? Is the harvest nearly finished now, or are most growers finished? What's the position?
Yes, most of the growers are finished now. Until the end of the week, all of them will probably finish. So we are basically at the end of the harvest. So that's a good thing, yes.
Yeah, you can all have some partying and blueberry schnapps. I think that's probably the way to,
you know that.
The ways to celebrate in Slovenia, definitely.
So most of the growers are happy with the harvest this year. So and with good quality, extremely high alphas, rich with essential oils. So really.
I know Gareth, who was on earlier on. I'm not sure whether Gareth's still with us, but he'll be very pleased to hear that. So that's good news. Good news.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, I've got no further questions for the panel. Unless anybody else has got any other questions, we'll move on. Oh, here we go. We continue to offer the 1 kilo pack and grow the range of hops sold in 1 kilo packs. The 1 kilo packs have been developed just for pilot trials, so we're not 100% going to go every variety into the 1 kilo packs. We are looking at 5 kilo packs minimum normally, but we will try and give a bigger range, particularly on the trial varieties, so we can get them out to people to try, because it's important that everybody gets a chance to brew with these hops and to give us feedback. The most important thing now for us, once the new hops have been grown, is to get them to breweries and for the brewers to be able to feedback to us. Yes, we love it. No, we hate it, or it's okay. So that is the most important thing. I think Ali was talking earlier on about how great the cones are and how many we can get and what yield we can get, which is mega important from the grower side of things, and also disease and pest resistance. But from a brewing point of view, it's definitely all about the aroma and the flavors that we get through into the beer. So that's good. Question from Ryan. Harlequin sounds interesting. I probably missed it earlier, but how far along is it? Nearly ready for use? Will, do you want to answer that one?
So we've got Harlequin growing on several farms. Ali's got a plot. The most mature plot is with Mark Andrews, and he's picking it next Tuesday. They're looking very good. They survived the wet winter that we had. Although some of the other farm plots of Harlequin elsewhere, the babies really struggled with the wet winter, or we didn't get to go out and plant them because we didn't want to plant them in waterlogged soil. So Harlequin's progressing nicely. The acreage is increased, and we will have roughly twice as much as we had last year. So we're hoping to get it out to more people to try. And we've got further acreage expansion planned for the spring to push that up a bit further.
I know it's not quite as good as we thought it was going to be, is it? We were hoping for bigger yields this year, and so we're going to be under on what we anticipated because of the light yield this year. But we are definitely planting more with a view to being cautious. We don't want to plant too much and overdo it, but at the same time, we certainly want to make sure everybody has a chance to try it. Question there from Tom. With experimental varieties, what quantity do we need to be growing before we can start to offer it in pellet? Well, the pelleting plant, we do lose some hops in the pelleting plant, not because there are lots of places for it to disappear, but because of processing runs at the start and the end of the run, we do get a lot of hops stuck in the dye, which we can't use. So anything less than 600 kilos in the pelleting plant isn't really going to be worthwhile as pelleting. We are looking at buying a smaller pelleter to produce smaller pellet runs. But obviously with COVID, we are trying to save some pennies if we can at the moment. So spending a lot of money on new equipment is not top of the list. But we will be looking at that over the next 12 months and seeing what we can do there.
It's important that a small pelleter produces pellets of the same quality as our large machine, so that it is possible to buy a small pelleting machine relatively inexpensively, but it has to then represent what we would get from our larger machine.
I can see Ali trying to speak there. Is your microphone gone off, Ali? Yeah, we can't hear you, I'm afraid. No. Have you turned the microphone off, or is there a? Can you type on the panel? Okay. All right. Well, I think we've had a really good session. Quick question from Daniel 2 minutes ago. Are hops only grown in England in the UK? There are a few hops grown in other parts, but generally the only commercial production is in Herefordshire and Worcestershire, and down in Kent, Sussex, and around that area. So there were a few in Hampshire as well. So, but yes, it's quite restrictive, and mainly down to the areas where hops were they able to pick them. So some people say it must be soil type or climate, but actually it's more down to where the availability labour was when we were picking hops by hand. So the people could come out of London, pick them in the southeast, and here from the West Country and Wales to go and pick the hops here.
Before mechanisation,
I don't know what's happening. Do you want to go back out and come back in again? Although we are running out of time because I know Jeremy's due in at 15:30.